here we are. All right,
Yes.
here we are. Welcome. Well, thanks for coming on an adventure with me today.
Yeah, of course. Happy to do so.
It's a
It's nice
lot.
to be able to spend some time with you.
Yeah, before your big move.
Yeah, heading to Baltimore in just a little under a month now. Crazy.
That's exciting. East Coast time. So,
Yeah.
for the audience here, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit about what you do in the world and what lights you up in the world and why do you love doing what you do?
Start late, why don't you? So I'm Quentin Ruiz. Nice to see everyone. So I am main thing that I do is I'm a coach or a CEO coach at a company called Mashari Method. So we coach companies ranging from OpenAI, OpenSea, DoorDash, you name it, a lot of different types of companies and a lot of upcoming companies that you may not have heard of. And
What do you coach those companies on
yeah,
specifically?
so it's I'm coaching them on leadership and management mainly because a lot of these companies they have people who are extremely good at product and they're very good at knowing what they're building. But when it comes to growing a team from 10 people to 100 people and things start to break down really quickly, they usually need a lot more help on both how do you there's management principles in place is one part, but the bigger part is how do you do the emotional work with these CEOs so they can overcome any blockages that they're having with themselves so that they become the better leaders to actually implement those really quality systems that have been tried and tested.
Yeah.
So that's my main thing.
Cool.
And I also do a lot of work in the education space, doing group coaching. And my main goal in life is to create a new university model for the future. And that's probably what lights me up more than anything. And happy to talk about that more, but I'll keep the bio short for now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing all of that. I'm curious in the coaching space because I find that to be such a important space right now as these companies are coming and growing so rapidly. Like, what have you found is like a core thing that is really beneficial in quick, rapid growth for these companies?
In terms of what I teach the CEOs,
Yeah.
oof. It's a good question. I think there's one universal lesson that we teach most CEOs that come to us because a lot of times these CEOs are overworked. They have to make decisions very quickly, and they have a lot of people that are depending on them to make these decisions. And a lot of times when you're moving fast, you can get in your own way a lot of times. And the first thing is being able to acknowledge when you're in fear or anger and knowing that fear and anger give really bad advice. And it doesn't matter how smart you are, how tapped in you are, how emotionally intelligent you are. As soon as you get into the states of fear, then your brain goes into fight or flight mode. Your amygdala starts firing, and you end up doing usually the exact opposite of what you need to do to be able to get your company or get yourself into a good place to then make the decisions or make the choices that'll really propel your company or yourself forward. And first step is awareness of when you're in that state. And then typically we quite literally take bets with the CEOs and we say, what does fear tell you is going to happen if you take that action? And then we say, okay, we're going to take the exact opposite bet against you. And we take these bets all the time. And the only reason why, I mean, like knock on wood, wherever there's some wood here, it's like we've always been right up to this point. It's not because we're magicians or geniuses in any way. It's just we know that when you're in that state, you end up making adverse decisions for yourself. And that's where the first transformation comes from is just emotional awareness of yourself, getting yourself out of that state so then you can propel yourself forward. So as funny as it is, it's nothing logic based. It's mainly how do you become more aware of your own emotions.
Yeah, I mean that makes complete sense because like you said, fear and anger give really bad advice. And when you're building the foundation of a company, like where you build it from determines the trajectory of the company in its entirety from every single choice point that can be made. Like,
Yeah, definitely. It could be a decision of whether or not to fire a co-founder. It could be a decision to even shut down a company if it's not working out well, or it could even be a decision to go in a completely different product direction and pivot the company. Even if it has millions of dollars in one direction, it could still be sunk cost. And they know deep down they need to cut back, restart, and then go into a different direction. So it takes on many different forms. But the usual thing is just someone pointing out, hey, you're in fear right now.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be in fear, but let's get you out of it now.
Yeah, it's powerful to have that reflective mirror for when you're holding so much. And I imagine that even affects, and I can relate to that in different work that I do with people, and I think it even affects them in micro decisions too, like in the day to day of how they're showing up to their employees, the conversations they're having. And like, have you noticed that too, how it will shift their micro choices?
Yeah, definitely. It has a lot of lingering effects afterwards, because for the big decisions, it's obvious to see what the value add is. But I think there's elements of this, may be going into a different topic, but it's dovetails getting out of fear, anger a lot, which
Yeah.
is if someone else is in anger or fear, how do you get them out of it? And the other big lesson that we teach startup founders is how do you make people feel heard? Because one of the most missed emotional intelligence skills that is not taught too well, or if at all, in schools or wherever their upbringing was. So when we teach CEOs how to do this, I mean, they start off kind of in simply saying, okay, not necessarily regurgitate, but summarize what that person had told you in the past, or that they just said to you. If they're angry, if they're fearful, be able to just repeat it back to them. It may seem overly simple, but if you're able to start there, then people know, okay, you really heard what I was saying before you move on to solution mode or giving them feedback, empathizing with them. You need to start at making them feel heard. And then the next level, when you get to the point of being able to summarize what they said, is to guess implicitly what they're trying to say to you. So if an employee or a co-founder comes to you and saying, I'm so mad at you, you did this to me, you made a terrible decision, you didn't include me in the conversation. The summary could be, okay, what I'm hearing from you is that you didn't include me in the decision, and you're hurt that you wanted to be included in it. And if you're trying to go implicitly and go a little bit level further. So go almost not exaggerate to the point where it's absurd, but a little bit exaggeration so that they're open to telling you what's really on their mind. So we say, it sounds like you're really, excuse my language, effing pissed off at me right now. And you lost trust in me as a co-founder, because when it came to really big decisions like this, before you would trust me. And now because you made a decision, this is showing to you that I no longer trust you. And seeing what's really underneath the surface for them. Because then afterwards, even if it's not that, they say, oh, well, it's not that bad. It's actually right here. But then they're willing to say what they're actually is on their mind. Because then if you can have those difficult conversations, then that's really what's going to propel you in a company. Because otherwise, if it's left underneath for too long, bad things happen very quickly. So in terms of day-to-day, it won't go that severe again, but being able to say what's truly on someone's mind in those micro decisions or the little moments of feedback or working through a product together, it can make a big difference.
Yeah, that's really powerful to just honestly be able to address those things and resolve them and create coherence, right, amongst teams, which I imagine is found when people are honest and can have real conversations, because we're in these human bioorganic technologies that experience emotions, and it's okay. And how do we move through them to co-create from a harmonious place?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
And do you find, because I find this, like, when that happens and people are in that harmonious place, it's like the problems somehow just start solving themselves. Like, the solutions come more naturally.
Yeah, I think it's a few things. I think that when you have the ability to give open feedback to each other or to make people feel heard, then people are a lot more willing to say what's on their mind. So you catch issues earlier, or you catch them as soon as they happen, so that they don't become lingering effects later. And you're also getting to the heart of issues quicker, so that you can then solve what's really the underlying thing that's at risk. As an example, say I'm going to omit names just for privacy's sake,
Of course.
but CEO I was coaching, he had implemented a new one-to-one accountability system and even a new way to lead team meetings. And the challenge was he was trying to hold people more accountable, because people would not have continuity from meeting to meeting, and there'd just be a lot of different challenges that came with it. And it had nothing to do with the system. The system was great. He knew how to hold people accountable. He knew what to ask. He knew what to do if they didn't do something, and to hold them accountable to it for next time. And yet I was wondering to myself, what's the challenge then for him? And at his point, it was, again, always comes down to emotions in some way, shape, or form, or something from your childhood. But we don't go into the therapy as much of it, but just more what's the here and now and what can we do going forward. But for him, it was the mindset of saying that if I'm holding people accountable or I'm not holding people accountable, then I'm not being an empathetic person, that I'm micromanaging. And he didn't realize that if you're just in empathy mode, you're a cheerleader or you're a daycare person for someone. You're not leading people towards what needs to get done to make a really wonderful company. But if you have accountability and empathy, then you can be a great leader. And if you're just accountable but you have no empathy, then you're just military. You're being militant and there's no empathy and things start to break apart as well. So you need to have a mix of both. So when he came out of the conversation saying, oh, it's okay, I can have empathy for the person, and I can understand where you're coming from with this, and still say, and you still didn't do it. This is what we need to do to make sure that that changes in the future. That's when it gets really powerful, and you get to identify what those little things are that make a difference.
Yeah, that makes sense. The balance of accountability and empathy. It's like the balance of like structure and heart.
Yeah, you need both, but you have to come from the heart first. Because I always tell people it's not even just about having both, it's about the ordering in which you do it. You got to make people feel heard to open up to get themselves out of fight or flight mode to then solve the logical challenges that are in front of you. So if you want to solve them more effectively, you need to usually start with the emotions if they're in that state and then go to the problem solving.
Yeah. What excites you most about being able to solve problems in this way or support these processes? What excites you most in that process, and what have you found?
Well, that's a good question. I think the greatest part is that in order to be a great coach, you have to do a lot of work on yourself, because it's going to show immediately if you aren't doing the work on yourself. So by nature, everything that you do outside of a coaching call will affect how well you're able to show up for the person in front of you. Because I think that when people first get into coaching, one common pitfall that happens is that you have a need to give value, to prove yourself in some way, saying, oh, I'm worth this much money, or I'm worth the time that they're spending with me, because they have so much leverage and their time is so important. You want to do right by them and you want to serve them. But the irony of that is that in order to serve them best, you need to completely detach yourself from the outcome to say, if I'm focusing on that, then I'm actually focusing on me and trying to meet my need of being valuable, as opposed to saying, what is the thing that's in front of you right now, getting curious, saying, what is it that this person needs? And even though I would have so many frameworks and tools that I can pull from at any time, I'm not reliant on them. I'm not saying I have a solution in my head already. This is why I like to do improv so much outside of it, because in improv, you have to be completely active and present in the moment. And if something shifts, if someone says, oh, in a scene, I'm pregnant, some crazy thing, you have to completely let go of your own narrative and be a part of the shared narrative that's in front of you.
Yeah.
So in a similar way, in a coaching call, I might be doing an accountability lesson or trying to brainstorm how do you make accountability better, but I've realized, oh, he is fearful right now that he's micromanaging. That's the real thing I need to address, and I have to put the complete framework away and not even focus on that at all right now, because that's a true problem in front of me. So I usually say that the difference between a good coach and a great coach is a great coach can get down to the core issue a lot faster. Like a good coach may be able to do it in an hour, hour and a half, but then a great coach will be able to say, I can pinpoint it, ask the right questions, listen very actively and reflected to them in a way that makes them go, whoa, that's really the issue that I need to solve right now. Or have that mindset shift that can completely change the trajectory in which they're leading a company or making a decision. That's what having those small moments, even if they don't have the crazy aha moments, like everyone's like, oh, I need to get them to change their life, I need them to shut down their company, or something crazy. You're going, no, like it can be a subtle change that has rippling effects down the line. That's completely okay. So when you see that 3 months or 6 months out, you're going, whoa. Seeing those impacts, because CEOs have so much leverage when it comes to what they're building for the world or who they're helping or having hundreds of employees, makes a big difference. So that always gets me excited.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the essence of that in the simply showing up and being present. Because that's where the magic happens. That's where the core issues or the core things are going to reveal themselves. And I know
It's a scary part too.
It is. And I've found that time and time again, because I've led so many groups and done one-on-one work, and whenever I like show up even to a group or a course with a laid out plan, guess what happens? 98% of the time, I throw away the plan and something completely different drops in because what's truly there is only going to show up in the present moment, and we don't know that until
Yeah,
we're there.
definitely.
And
And granted, plans are wonderful. It's like
They're great.
They are wonderful. Like it's great to have a plan of where you're going, but then be flexible enough. Like I always like semi-structured approaches where it's you have a plan going into it, or you have an idea of the themes in it, but then as soon as it comes to you, at least in coaching or running
Yes,
events, it's
yes.
just a completely different ballpark as soon as you enter the room.
yeah, absolutely. Having some sort of framework and structure that holds it all together is really powerful. Similarly, I love that about improv. I did
Yeah.
a lot of improv
Oh,
back
thanks.
in
There
the
you go.
day, and the biggest value I found was listening.
Yeah.
Like so often we don't learn how to listen, or we're anticipating what we're going to say next
Yes.
when someone else is speaking. And in improv, you have to be purely present because when you anticipate, the scene will likely fall flat.
That's right. Yeah, very true. And same thing with coaching. When you start anticipating it and if you even start formulating a potential solution in your head, saying, oh, I've seen this before, this is their issue, I'm going to give them this solution. Whenever I've done that in a coaching call, it's immediately fallen apart. They start going, oh, that's actually not really it, or you're not listening to me now, or oh, you're oversimplifying the issue. And every time I have stepped back, I've gotten curious, I've asked them deeper questions, or I've given, it doesn't necessarily mean to me that it's open-ended. It can sometimes be a closed question to say, is this true? Or was this the thing that led to it? It could be a yes or no. At times we'd be like, oh man, that wasn't it actually. And then they start formulating the solutions themselves in their head, because when it comes out of their own mouth, it's a completely different ballgame in terms of what the solution could be. That's
Yeah.
going to work for them.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes if you can put on an advisor hat and say, if they say, Quinn, I am lost, I'm about to go over a cliff right now, I need some advice, and I'll be like, okay, here's some general good practices, or this is one potential solution. How does it resonate with you? And you can be a thought partner, but typically, on average, the best, or not the best solutions, but the solutions that work for a person comes from them coming to the table first.
Yeah. Them being able to see it for themselves, speak it for themselves, think it for themselves.
Yes, definitely. We're guides. We're not trying
Yeah.
to give them solutions.
Yeah. I love that so much because, people often don't like to be told what to do, but they like to find it and know that it's right for them.
Yes. Yes. And you could be saying the exact same thing, but they say it first, you're like, that's it.
Right. You might already know it ahead, but
Yeah.
you still have to guide them there.
Yep. That's right.
Yeah. And let go of even that being the thing. Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah. How do you feel like, because I love moving from emotional intelligence and moving in this way, and I think it's so important for the future of the businesses that are being created in the world. How do you see that having a ripple effect on our society? Like companies moving from more emotionally intelligent spaces and building from those spaces.
Could you rephrase the question a little bit? I just want to make sure I understand the essence of it.
Yeah, like why do you feel like it's so important for companies to move from such an emotionally intelligent space? What's the value in that for the company and then also for the world?
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. I think that the world is becoming infinitely more complex, and things are moving a lot faster than they did before. I mean, even, I'm not sure how old this video will be by the time people watch it, but the advent of AI, even in the last 2 months, how fast things are changing, the way that work is changing. It means that you can amplify the good that you can do very quickly, but it also means you can amplify the bad that you can do in a company. And the higher up you go, or the bigger company becomes, the more important EQ becomes, because it's no longer, do I have product market fit, or do I have the right thing that I'm building? The question is, how well can I lead people, and how well can I influence people in the right direction to where you're building something that's worthwhile or beneficial for the world. So if you don't have good EQ with people at the highest level, or with yourself, oh man, every decision you make is not just a 1x or 2x, it's a 100x impact in either direction.
Right.
So you have to, I mean, there's a point where it becomes a necessity to be able to do that. So I think that even now, like coaching is it's a newer concept, I think, because usually people think of coaching in a sports or in a sports arena,
Yeah.
and they don't usually think of it in business. They're going, why the heck do I need a coach in business? And I think the reason why coaching is becoming a lot more prominent in these companies is because they want this outside, unbiased party that's in their corner that they can express their most vulnerable parts of themselves that they talk to their co-founder about. They're going, oh, my co-founder might leave me now, or he might be angry at it because it involves him. Or I talk to my investors, they're going, oh man, maybe you're not the right CEO. Maybe we should fire you now. And your employees are going, no, I need to be the leader for them. I can't be showing my vulnerability to them. And even if they did, all of them have their bias. And even their mom, if they want to go to their mom, they're going, well, you're doing a great job, honey, but they don't understand the context that they're in. So if you have the ability to really open up to someone else and have those moments of growth because you're able to get vulnerable and say where your weakness is, you can become a better version of yourself and lead people even just a tiny bit better. The ripple effects are huge. So in terms of how important I think it is, it's the bigger a company becomes, the exponentially more important it is for you to have or learn and develop yourself to have higher EQ.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's brilliant. And I love what you said about the vulnerability. I feel like the access to vulnerability individually in a company and collectively is like our greatest source of power.
It can be, I think.
Can be
it can
one.
be.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that vulnerability is a tricky one because there's a fear of showing vulnerability and being able to show weakness and seeing
Yeah.
if people are going to take advantage of that weakness or not when you show it. So there's that part that's hard for people to overcome initially. But there's another part of vulnerability of saying, like, in what context or to what extent do I show vulnerability? To whom do I show vulnerability? And oftentimes the leaders, they're inching on the way of not showing vulnerability enough because they want to show that, hey, we're going the right direction. We have a vision. We know where we're going.
Yeah.
But showing a little bit of vulnerability at the right moment can say, wow, that person is human. I can understand what he's going through now, he or she is going through. And that can inspire people to stay with a company or through hard times a lot more if they can show that they are imperfect humans.
Yeah.
That it's okay to be imperfect.
Yeah. And I feel like, too, it gets to the core of what narratives are being told internally or unconscious patterns are
Yeah.
happening that then can be rewritten when one is vulnerable
Yeah.
and sharing, like, oh, like, this is what's going on, or I'm struggling with this, or I have this story I've made up of, like, this is what's going to happen if we go down this path, and that's why I'm leading this way.
Yeah.
And I feel like when we're vulnerable, we can be honest to then rewrite those narratives to then create from that
Yeah.
heart space.
Yeah. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to be vulnerable to everyone all the time, too.
No.
It's just that you have the space to be able to open up the ability to be vulnerable.
Yeah, and in a safe space
Yeah.
where that can be held and acknowledged and, rewritten, I think is important too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. Well, anything here that you feel inspired to impart, any words of wisdom that are near and dear to your heart in this moment in time?
Oh, that's a good question, too. It's interesting. I didn't actually grow up with a lot of religion at all. I think I became more spiritual over time as I've traveled and got more into Buddhism and meditation. Just naturally, it starts to happen. But one thing that I grew up with a lot was quotes. And I loved quotes from books or famous people. I was a huge quote nerd. And one of the biggest ones I followed since I was a kid, and my mom said this to me all the time, was just do small things with great love, which came from Mother Teresa. And I think that more than any business framework, more than any tactic or skill set that I've learned, being able to do that has gotten me farther in life than anything else, is just keeping that philosophy on do small things with great love. So I think that if other people do it, it's like out of the complexity of coaching or anything else we've talked about, just I think that's always the one that I fall back to for myself. So I hope that others can take away from that too.
I love that. Do small things with great love.
Always.
Always.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's a powerful place to end here today, is do small things with great love and yeah, let that be a guiding light for you if it resonates.
Yeah. And if you ever want to do coaching too, just start coaching. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can do it with a friend. And I think that you don't even need to be a quote unquote official professional coach to be able to give someone help in your life that you need to. And making people feel heard is just a very easy stepping stone that all of us can do, regardless of our relationship to each other.
Yeah. Oh, and also, if anyone wants to reach out to you or CEOs watching,
Sure.
how's the best way to connect with you? I can put links and such, but
Yeah, sure. So email is Quintin@masharimethod.com. I'll spell it because I have a funny spelling for my name. It's QUINNTIN@masharimethod.com. And I think coach.masharimethod.com is another way you can reach me really easily. And if you type in Quintin Ruiz, RUIZ on LinkedIn, I'll probably be the one there because it's not a common name. So that's how you can reach me.
beautiful, and I can add links below. Well, thank you so much for being here.
course.
And yeah, any final notes on your end?
I think that's it. Thank you so much for your time.
All
It's
right.
been fun.
Beautiful. Do small things with great love.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.